Get ready to ride along for another exciting episode of No Driving Gloves, where Derek, John, and Will use over 75 years combined industry knowledge to bring you a bare-knuckled view on the collector car hobby. So let's get rolling. Merry Christmas, everybody. We're actually dropping this on Christmas Day. Didn't think that one through. We probably should have taken this week off, but we promised you an episode. Unfortunately, Derek's out Christmas shopping, I believe, with his fiancée. He's at Lowe's, so maybe he's just Christmas shopping for himself. So he won't be joining us this evening. So you just have Will and I. How's your week went, Will, since we last spoke?
Well, it's been pretty normal. Just working. Right now, we're working a lot of hours. So actually, I just basically just turned all the lights off in the fab shop, come in here and put on my headphones and start talking. So it's been a long day, but it's part of it. That's what we do. We work hard and try to have a little bit of fun after work.
Yep, I'm kind of winding up my year. Tomorrow's my last day for the year, and I'm recording a couple days before Christmas. I'll go home for the rest of the year. My birthday's the following week. I never work on my birthday. Never have in 45 years on the planet. So not going to start now.
Must be nice.
To say I always get it easy. Will jokes that I never work, and my coworkers joke that I never work, and I hope my boss jokes that I never work. But
where there's smoke, there's fire. So, do you really work, John, or you just get a paycheck?
I know I know they miss me when I'm gone, so I guess I must actually do stuff. But it again, this collector car stuff, I don't think you really call it work, even though you've been doing 12, 15-hour days the last couple of weeks. And when I have to do 12, 15-hour days or whatever I do every day just comes so naturally, it's fun. It doesn't feel like work.
You're right. There are times where, like right now, we're kind of pushing on a project. There are times where it gets a little, you get tired and you ready, you want to go home, but you just kind of gotta, stick it out for another hour or two and finish up the task that you're trying to finish. And we set pretty hard timelines on us when we get to this point on a project, and sometimes it gets a little frustrating. But at the end of the day, generally it's just a 2, maybe a 3 week push. If it's going to be over that, then we'll just bang away a little bit more in regular hours, and then hit it hard. It's not worth pushing over really a couple of weeks.
Well, not to stroke your ego or anything, you don't get to be one of those top shops in that by working strict 8 to 5 hours and taking an hour lunch or 2 15-minute breaks a day. There's pushing. I've been there before where you do 12, 15, 18-hour, 24-hour days to try to get stuff done, to meet a deadline, meet a show, make a client happy. It's part of the industry, but like I said, I have fun doing it. I don't have to do it every day anymore, especially in the museum world where I'm at. We don't have hard deadlines. We have deadlines, but it's not like when I was at Pizza Hut 25, 30 years ago when we had to cook $2,000 worth of pizzas in an hour. And at that time, it was like $8 for a medium and then $4, $4. So it's a lot of pizzas at $4 a piece.
Yeah, it's a lot of pizzas. You're right. You're not going to get ahead in any industry by just going in and working normal hours. I mean, you gotta push it, and you gotta be willing to work hard and have an understanding significant other that sees your passion in what you do too. Because a lot of times that you're not seeing eye to eye with your wife or spouse or whatever, and it can get hard on the home front. So they got to be willing to have an understanding of what you're trying to accomplish too. And if they see, that you're having success, that makes it a little easier, and then they're willing to, help you and get there. So my wife completely understands that at least a couple times a year, there'll be a couple of weeks where she just really won't even see me. I get in after she goes to bed and leave before she gets up.
Definitely take understanding significant other, and you kind of won the lottery on that. I've had my women troubles over the years, and I'm trying again to slow down and get a little bit. And after we just talked about me never working, I do some long hours, and there's an event I manage every year in October, and if it wasn't for the fact my father comes down and volunteers at that event, I probably would just go ahead and camp at the event and never go home for 5 days straight, because that 45-minute drive home and that 45-minute drive back is just an hour and a half I lose every day that I need.
That's right.
Fortunately, he does come down, so I do get a little bit of mental break from it, and it's part of work. Again, like I say, I love it and I enjoy it.
That's right.
It's also why I think us three sit down for a couple hours every week and bore our listeners to death about our conversations and topics. And we mentioned last week, or I mentioned last week incorrectly for the umpteenth time, and I think 29 episodes at this point, and using hot rod and street rod as a synonym, and you called me out on it again. I thought we would take an opportunity tonight, since it's just you and I, to help educate our listeners on those terms. As we kind of talked about briefly in the pre-show, we have hot rod, street rod, retro rod, rat rod, street machine. There's dozens of these terms, and you live in a world where these terms are viable and they mean something different. And when it comes to giving awards and what you're building the car for, and I was hoping you'd be able to explain a little bit of that. I'm probably going to listen a lot in this episode and not be my typical narcissistic self and talk all the time, but hopefully have some poignant questions and listen to you, and maybe you won't have to correct me too much after episode 30 or maybe 40 or episode 50.
Well, it's all right. It don't bother me correcting you, John, because there ain't many things to correct you on.
Hey, I get lucky. But let's just start. Everybody knows that you own Big Oak Garage, and you build some really fine rides and put them out there, and you've contended for some of the biggest awards in the industry. You've won some of the biggest awards in the industry. Tell us, I would say, what does Big Oak Garage build as far as hot rods, and what is your definition of a hot rod as far as Big Oak Garage is concerned?
Well, a hot rod can be anything. Okay. Well, I say anything domestic with a V8 motor. Okay, engine. To me, is what a hot rod starts out being. So you can take a brand new Corvette and add power adders, suspension, and it becomes a hot rod. You can take a Model A Ford and build it in more of a kind of a traditional fashion. And by traditional, what I mean is something that was kind of built back in, back in the day, back in the, 60s, 70s, whatever. And to me, that's a hot rod. You can take a 69 Camaro and make it a hot rod. Then again, you can take a 69 Camaro and make it a Pro Touring street machine as well. So really a hot rod is big and little tires, a souped up motor, whatever it is, and more of an aggressive, I'm going to say, drag race type of look. You can have 18 and 20-inch wheels on a hot rod. Then again, you can have 14s on the front and 15-inch wheels on the back, and it's still a hot rod. So really a hot rod is more of a traditionally built, drag race oriented, styled car. Yes, it's a street car that you can drive on the street, but it has influences from drag racing. You can go and look at pretty much any car that comes out of Bobby Alloway's shop, Alloway's Hot Rods, and it's a freaking hot rod. I mean, it's got big wheels and tires on the back, smaller ones on the front, a big badass motor, generally a straight shift, kind of stripped down, not a lot of fancy doodads and trinkets, simple interior. It don't have a backup camera. It don't have all this super modern crap. It's just kind of a stripped down, bare bones hot rod. Like I said, 90% of the cars that come out of Alloway shop, it's a hot rod. Um, and then you can go street rod too. Street rod, for one thing, is going to be 1948 and older. A 1949 car is not a street rod. Yes, I know Street Rodder magazine is up to, I think, 57. No, they're up to in the 60s. But a street rod is 1948 and older. All right. Yes, you can have a 1948 older hot rod or a 1948 older street rod. A street rod is going to be more of, I'm going to say, more on the luxury side. Okay, it's going to have air conditioning. It's going to have the modern conveniences of today. A lot of them have backup cameras and GPS and stuff like that. So to me, there's the big difference between a hot rod and a street rod. A street rod is modernizing an older 48 and older vehicle to today's amenities, where a hot rod is more stripped down, bare bones, big motor, small wheels in the front, big wheels in the back. And there's some out there that kind of blend the two. But that's my biggest difference between a hot rod and street rod. You can take a 61 Impala and put big and littles on it, put it down on the ground, and put a blower sticking through the hood, and there's a hot rod. And then those type of cars become, if you modernize those, if you really start changing the body lines and cutting the bumpers and changing door handles and trim, chopping tops, they become what they call a custom rod. If you leave the body stock appearing, maybe lowered, big wheels, big brakes, late model motor, transmission, maybe an updated interior, a fairly new term that I think originated from Barrett Jackson is a resto mod. Not a big fan of that term. I never use it. But that's kind of what they're referring to as a resto mod. It's kind of restored on the outside, but modified on the inside. And then, of course, you can get into the pro touring side of things. To me, there's no such thing as a pro touring street rod. Yeah, there's been people out there build street rods to, corner, handle well, and stuff like that. But to me, it's still a street rod. To me, when I think of pro touring, it's the modern day street machine. It's it's a muscle car that you have modified to handle like a new Corvette. It's got big brakes. It's got 18-inch, 19-inch wheels and tires with a low a 200 tread rating for your tires, so it's stickier, and it's designed to corner and stop and have bunches of power. 99% of all your pro touring cars are all fuel injected, whether it's an LS motor or a Coyote, or generally it's a late model motor. They're already out there running the new LT motors, the new Hemis. So that's your pro touring side, and yeah, you can take a truck and make it a pro touring truck, and there's a lot of blending that goes back and forth with these terms. That kind of covers the basics of it. John, you got any questions?
No, I'm taking in what you're saying, and I see a lot of. To me, and that's probably where my confusion comes in, is the overlap in that. But you're basically saying that if I want to get into a street rod, it technically needs to be an older than 1948 vehicle, and it can still have the big wheels in back and small wheels in front, but it's modernized in some fashions. And then you're saying the hot rod is similar to what you do, and it can
Correct.
kind of be any model year, but I'm guessing normally newer than 48, and is designed to be built for performance more in a straight line than maybe going around corners and such, and can have a little bit of modifications in that, but everything on it is functional. It's not done for appearance sake, it's done because that modification adds to the performance of the vehicle.
A lot of guys are building cars to look like a hot rod, but they're really kind of a sheep in wolf's clothing type of thing. It's developed into its own look. I consider the gold 32 sedan that we built, to me, that's just a straight up hot rod. I mean, it's stripped down. Yes, it's full fendered, but it's got, knockoff wheels. It's got an aluminum interior. It's got headers that come out the side, no hood sides. That is to me, that is a definition of a hot rod. Where a street rodded 32 would have, hood sides and a nice plush interior, cruise control, air condition, a heater. This car don't even have a heater. So a hot rod can be a look as well as a performance oriented thing as well. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, good. Good. So, you see an unchopped 32 with a leather interior that's, you know, really built more to say drive to, on long distances. That's going to be more of a street ride. Yes, there are guys that take a car like the Gold 32 that we built with no heat, no air, exhaust coming out the side. It's loud as hell. It's got stiff suspension, and they drive them cross country. The street rod is more enjoyable for your wife to ride cross country. You know what I'm saying?
We kind of touched on that an episode or two
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah, we did. We did. I would hop in that Gold 32 and drive it to California and not think nothing about it. My wife would ride 20 minutes down the road and she's going to be ready to get out. It's just, to me, you got to sacrifice comfort for cool. And to me, there's nothing cooler than just a bare bone, stripped down hot rod, lightweight, rowdy sounding motor, tires that look good, that don't ride good. I mean, that's just me.
So if we get into, I'm thinking of some of the stuff that's I've seen around your shop. You actually get into a little bit of all of it, though.
Yeah, we really do. The 48 Ford Coupe that we built, it's a straight up street rod. I mean, it's just, it's just a really nice, clean street rod. The gold sedan's a hot rod. The 10 Woody that we built, it's more of a custom rod. It's a modernized 51 Chevy 10 Woody. LS powered, big wheels, big tires, nice plush leather interior, air conditioned. Actually, it's got two air conditioners. It's got a rear air and front air. The black Impala that we built would be really considered more of a resto mod. Just nice wheels and tires, big brakes. Everything is stock on the outside. 90% of the interior is stock, but you raise the hood and there's a super detailed big block. I appreciate everything. So a lot of it just depends on the customer's what they like, and a lot of times you can tell what they like when they walk in the door with what they're wearing, how they talk, the shoes they wear. You can pretty much tell what kind of car they want just by watching them.
We
And,
kind of have a joke about two guys they're the people that go to Sturgis with their Harleys, but
yep.
they have their Harleys shipped up there.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they fly in, they get in, unload the Harleys 20 miles outside of, say, Sturgis, and then ride on in. And they did that one year. And I guess somebody walked up to both of them, pointed at them, and goes, lawyer and banker. And they were floored because one's a lawyer and one's a banker. And they're kind of going, how did you know? Because they're not in their suits; they're in their leathers and their jeans and their
Oh yeah.
T-shirt. And she goes, brand new shoes, perfectly creased pressed jeans. It's you can kind of
Yeah.
tell that when I used to sell cars, one of the little techniques that you use to judge somebody on kind of pre-qualifying them, being judgmental of these people, if they're whether or not they're there to buy a car, they're there to BS you, if they can afford what they're looking at, is to look at their shoes. Because
Yeah.
uh, an income challenged person will usually dress up to buy a car, but they won't, they'll have a nice shirt or, even a polo or a button down, and they'll put on their good jeans. But no matter what, their shoes always have some sort of wear. I'm kind of guilty of that. I don't fit in that. I'm the exception to that rule. And a wealthy person, I know some extremely wealthy people that like to go into the Bentley dealership, and say Bentley of New York City, and they dress down and put on a flannel shirt, or a little alligator polo, not a real polo, and some Levi's or something, and go in there to kind of harass the salesman. But they always lose because they don't have crappy shoes to go with the outfit.
Oh, that's
You,
funny.
you get these little subtle things out of people that you have, as a salesman, you kind of have to watch for. And like you said, there's the little cues, I think, with the way people are when they, how they're dressed when they come in, and you can. I didn't want you to give away your secrets and be judgmental in case any of your customers are listening and going, I had you made when you walked in, and I knew what you asked for wasn't what we were going to end up building. But we all have our cues about that. Sometimes my spelling and grammar and punctuation isn't the greatest in writing, and here I am doing a podcast trying to do public speaking, and people think I don't know what I'm talking about. But it's just, I'm sure I'm judged a lot differently than the person I am.
It's kind of weird how that really happens. I mean, you can tell a lot about a person, especially when they're not at work, when they're in their environment that they like being in. And 99% of the guys that come up here, you would assume that they didn't really have what it would take to build a car like this. I'll use one guy an example. A guy we built that '48 Ford Coupe for. I mean, if Roger Raminger was his name, super good guy, love him to death. And if he were to walk in, you wouldn't think that he would have much of anything. I mean, just old wore out shoes, shirts with holes in it, blue jeans with holes in it. He has a rat tail. I mean, you would automatically assume that he couldn't afford a car like that. So that's one great thing that I learned early in my career, because that was one of the first cars that we built was, don't judge a book by its cover, because you don't know what that guy's got, you know, and and he told me what kind of car he wanted to build, and I said, all right, dude, let's do it. It was my first car that ever got shot for a magazine, first car that ever won any kind of good guys award, first top 25 at Shades. I mean, we're talking a nice car. So yeah, it's kind of funny how, and I kind of knew the style of car that he wanted too when he walked in. I was like, well, he's going to want a street rod. He looks like a street rodder. Oh, a guy walks in wearing Chuck Taylors and has some tattoos and hair slicked back. He's going to want a hot rod. He's not going to want no plush leather interior and comfy seating and stuff like that.
So you're saying you can qualify them a little bit, but you seem to have a little bit more open mind than the used car salesman in me, that everybody's got a buck somewhere.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I never rule anybody out. Most of the people that we're building cars for, it's their passion. So when they're not at work, they kind of dress the part and act the part. If you go to I know last episode we talked about the Radwood type show. There's shows out there like Bulletproof that you mentioned, and these traditional type hot rod car shows. You go to a show like that, and it's a lot like Radwood. That's not a lot of them aren't dressing up to come to the show. That's a daily thing. They wear jeans with grease stains, and they slick their hair back. They got neck tattoos. They wear jewelry, rings, and it's just that culture. Street riders like guys like my dad's age. They wear their straw hat and their NSRA Street Rod Nationals T-shirt and their New Balance tennis shoes, and that's just it's just the way they dress. It's just kind of their thing. So you can tell a lot about the style of car a person likes just by the way they carry themselves and dress and whatnot.
Now that you've given away all your trade secrets, the next 6 guys that walk into your shop are going to dress differently just to throw you off their path.
And that's fine. That's fine. So we'll still build them the car that they want. If they come in with a pompadour and leather shoes and a neck tattoo, and they want a '69 Camaro Pro Tour, and hey, let's build it. I don't care.
No, coming back. No, that's not the car you want. This is the car. So when we get into these terms, we've kind of done hot rod and street rod and touched a little bit on resto mods, and I think you were right. I never really thought about it, but I believe that is a Barrett Jackson Scottsdale Auction Week coined term. I'm kind of a resto rod guy because I like the old cars, but just give me my '60 Cadillac on a brand new Escalade chassis, and I'm good.
That's right.
I want the daily reliability of that and the look of the old. But then we get into, when we're walking around good guys, it's, you're in the one hall and you have the hot rods on one side. There's a dozen of them up for their awards. And on the other side, you have the street machines and it alluded to earlier, the rat rods. And I'm not quite a big fan of the rat rods. I think the look's cool. Rat rods you built with, leftover stuff, and they were kind of ratty. And then the problem is they got to be too ratty and downright dangerous. And now they're built almost with all brand new components and just patinaed.
Yep.
What about some of these, subcultures to the hot rod, street rod industry? Opinions, thoughts, definitions?
To me, a lot of people call traditionally built hot rods rat rods. Okay. The shop truck that we built, the 65 Ford truck, yes, it was rough on the outside. Okay. It was factory paint. Mother Nature had done its thing on that truck since 1965. You raised the hood, the firewall had been repainted, slicked up nice. It had a rebuilt 460 custom inner fender wells that were painted up nice. So under the hood was really nice and detailed. The interior, it had leather interior. Everything was insulated, Dynamat, air conditioned, modern gauges, and the bottom side of the truck was really nice too. That thing got called a rat rod more times. I just got tired of arguing with people. That thing was far from a rat rod. I'm like you, John. I'm not a big fan of rat rods, but I do like patinaed, well-built hot rods. I had a 46 Ford or a 46 Chevrolet Fleetline, flat black, wide whites, pretty nice car. People called it a rat rod. It wasn't a rat rod. It was, it was a custom. It was like a '50s custom. To me, the definition of a rat rod is as we call them at the shop. We call a lot of times we call them junk rods. I'm not a fan of it. Never have been a fan of it. It's got to be safe. If it's not safe, it don't need to be on the road. And there's a lot of cars out there that just aren't safe.
I'm going to say it's not just rat rods that fall in that unsafe. Some of them are just poorly built. But when I was alluding to rat rods, people got to the point where, they would take an old Model A frame that wasn't designed to have a Model A motor in it anymore, let alone putting a 327 in it with 300 or 400 horsepower. And the frame is rusted through in areas, and the rivet holes are elongated, and
Exactly.
there's just nothing there that makes it safe. And you go, oh, it's my car, I'm driving it, I'm the one who's going to get killed. Unfortunately, when that car comes apart at 70 miles an hour on the interstate, there's usually somebody next to you or within a couple 100 feet that can go along for that ride with you. And those are always the people I'm concerned with. Yes,
Exactly.
I might be willing to die for my ride, but I'm not willing to take somebody with me because of it.
Yep. There's another guy out there, Ricky Bobby's Rod Shop. He builds a really, really cool car. Most of his cars are Model A sedans, really low slung. People call them rat rods. His cars are so far from a rat rod, but it has, they're really low, they're chopped hard. The back tires stick up, above the rear window opening, between the window openings. People call them rat rods, but it's not a rat rod. It's a it's actually a really nice car. I'm not a fan of, when you raise the hood on something and it looks dangerous. Not a fan of these crazy suspensions that these guys come up with that, they take parts off of this and parts off of that and just junky looking stuff, you know. Um, not a fan of, you know, stop signs for floor pans. I mean, it can go on for days. And when you go to these traditionally inspired shows, a lot of them are called rat rod shows. And granted, there are cars being built, like you said, it's all new parts that they've made to look like a rat rod, and I guess I need to come to the term that a rat rod can be a dependable car, but in my mind, uh, you know, a rat rod is an unsafe hot rod that may have a cool look. It may not. It's kind of gotten out of hand. Where to me, all of them are pretty junky and ragged looking. A lot of people take it overboard. You got that TV show, Las Vegas Rat Rods. He's not really building rat rods. To me, that's not a rat rod. He's building a pretty high dollar car that's all safe with good suspension. Yeah, he puts diesel motors in a lot of them. That don't classify it as a rat rod. It's just a diesel powered traditional kind of built hot rod. But they're really not traditional built hot rods either. So I still have mixed emotions on the rat rod thing. I guess you can have something that looks like a rat rod, but it's really not a rat rod. I don't know what you would call it because it's not really a hot rod. It's not a street rod. I mean, I guess it is a rat rod. I don't know.
I don't know how we've done in this episode of educating. We've definitely given some definitions, and we've definitely then spun off on some tangents about every one of these little subcultures in this industry. This is probably an episode that you need to take your Christmas vacation after you've listened to us, or if you're picking this up in January or something, and go back a little bit on our social media, because I'm definitely going to get some pictures up and do some definitions, because I think a lot of this needs to be explained in photographs. Every photograph's 10,000 more words or 1,000 more words that we can add to this podcast, and it's tough to narrate the visualizations and what we're talking about, especially on the low end of the rat rod scale. See, I'm a little bit different than you will. I think a rat rod's a look, and I think that's what you're coming to terms with. Is it kind of looks ratty and stuff. Originally, it was a junky car or something that was naturally patinaed and put together, and it's now grown. And I think the people, the shops building them that have to take liability, the people that can afford to build them at those shops have taken responsibility, and they've stepped up the game and realized we need to kind of start with something good, i.e., like your shop truck, which was a solid vehicle that has a lot of cool stuff under it to prove that it's a solid a car. But on the outside, it has that nostalgic feel. I'm going to bring restoration into this. One of the first cars I ever was involved in restoring was a 1929 Packard, and it amazed me the fit of the components, that a layer of paint didn't allow these two pieces to go together. And I'm thinking, this is 1929. They didn't have that level of precision. 19 teens obviously didn't. And people talk about, oh, these cars were brush painted, or these cars were, the parts were dipped and then the drips were cut off of them. So they had runs and things in them. And we use that as an excuse to, excuse the term, but half-ass the work we're doing. And that's not the case. Those cars were done very well, even in the day. Even a basic $300, $350 Model T in the day was a well-constructed vehicle. There were corners cut in that, but everything was still precision. If you get into the Rolls Royces and that of the teens, they had redundant systems and precision to the 10,000ths of an inch. I think a lot of people don't realize that existed, so they have to have a little bit of that patina is correct. Well, it when it was new, it didn't have the patina. It was a great vehicle. And the rat rod is we think of the romanticism of, oh, that was a great shop truck in 1966. Well, it didn't look like that in 1966. That shop truck as it aged 40 or 50 years. And so I think of the rat rod as an appearance and a strictly a style that fortunately people's trying to think of the term I want, people's, again, sense of responsibility have brought them to be safe, reliable, dependable cars that can run through Barrett-Jackson for obscene amounts of money. And people can justify putting obscene amounts of money into these cars to achieve that look, as opposed to somebody who literally digs a Model A frame out of somebody's back 40 behind a barn and takes it out that's got rust holes through the frame and then slaps something together. It looks cool, but it's dangerous.
Yeah, I think I can justify changing my terminology from, a rat rod being a look and a style, and then what I used to consider a rat rod, hell, I'll just call them junk rods.
That might be a good term to start using, and maybe we can coin that one here.
So, an unsafe rat rod is a junk rod. There you go.
I'm gonna go with that. So we started with a few categories that we wanted to try to define, and we've now coined a new one. So when you see, a junk rod and the guy that's sitting in his Model A that, the rear tires are as tall as the roof line because it's chopped so much, and the guy sits in it and his head's comes out of the roof, and the gear shifts above his head, and he's got to, reach up like he's got ape hangers to shift the thing, but the shifter comes out of the transmission half the time. There's a junk rod for you.
There you go. Done.
I'm going to say we'll go ahead and make it a short episode. We'll go ahead and cut it here. Hopefully we have defined some of this stuff for everybody. This, like I said, this episode's releasing on Christmas, and I know some of our listeners will download this and listen to it here on Christmas, but let's not take you completely away from your family today. And if you're somebody who's picking it up a little bit later in the week, I'm going to say sorry about the abbreviated episode. But just to let you know, we're here. We are going to take New Year's off. We're not going to release an episode on New Year's Day, so we'll see you the second Monday in January. To let everybody know, or to let your friends know, we have now officially been added to the Spotify catalog. That's another 100 million potential listeners for us, almost more popular than the iTunes. But, of course, you can find this podcast on any of your favorite podcatchers. If you can't, please send us a message. Sometimes things go wrong. Sometimes the coding gets messed up, and I can't check every single app out there every week. If I could, I would almost have to actually be doing work for a change. But do you have anything to say for the last time in 2017 to our listeners, Will?
Man, I just want to thank everybody for listening. Hopefully, we don't bore you to death. And if you like us, tell your friends. Just go ahead and grab their phone and download it for them. Just go ahead and do it right then. I've actually done that on a lot of my family. They ask about it, and I'm just like, give me your phone. And I hope everybody had a good Christmas and has a happy New Year. And 2018. 2018 should be a good one. So we're going to keep the ball rolling here at No Driving Gloves and continue to record every week, or at least every week that we can. And hopefully y'all be along for the ride.
Yeah, we thank everybody for being with us for this first 6 months of the show. This is the 30th episode in. We're approaching 4,000 downloads. Nobody ever talks about their downloads, but 4,000 in 6 months is a pretty respectable number for three guys that don't know how to use social media. I'm going to say, kind of like Will, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, insert whichever holiday you want, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, etc., etc. Can't say them all because we leave them all out, but I think those are the big three. Happy New Year, and I think you'll have me, Derek, and Will seeing you the second weekend of January 2018, and we'll look for a good ride into that year, as we said. But with that, I'm going to say good night, good afternoon, happy generic time of the day to everyone out there.